Hello to you all my friends out there in this universe of power. This is the Texas Titan Gabriel Pena. I am here in Loveland, Colorado for the 2022 Shaw Classic, and I am joined by a very special guest today, Mitchell Hooper. Mitchell, thank you for being on the show. How are you doing, brother?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm excited to see what this weekend holds.
This show has quickly gained the reputation of becoming one of the big three contests throughout the year. You know, World's Strongest Man, the Arnold Classic, and now the Shaw Classic. And that's not to take away anything from other shows, but it is a heavy contest. 4 events, each 4 events on 2 days. Sorry, 8 events, 4 events each day for 2 days at altitude. And this is heavy stuff. And we've all been training well, but we've had hefty contest seasons. You've had a hefty contest season. You just got back from the Giants Live World Open and the World Deadlift Championships in Cardiff.
Yeah.
How are you feeling 1 week out of your last contest?
I feel good. I think my training age is so young that I can get away with it right now. And it's sort of what I have to do this year. You can't say I'm inexperienced and that's the issue. And then on the other hand, not compete and choose your comps. So this is probably the only year that I'm going to do a whole bunch in a row. But physically I feel pretty good, but not really going to know until that second day starts. I think you get through those first 4 events. Second day, I think will be a little bit easier to tolerate, which is nice. We have the log press, the leg press, the stones, and what's the 4th one on day 2?
Let's see. We got log press, leg press. You got everything right there.
I do. The frame and arm over arm.
Frame and arm over arm. These quite an event spread. And just like last weekend, you know, you started off the contest last weekend with a max deadlift attempt.
Yep.
This weekend, you're starting off the Hummer tire deadlift with a max deadlift attempt.
Yeah, and that's when you get into my muscles feel fine, but how's the central nervous system going to hold up?
Exactly.
So,
you know, how that brings me to a question I wanted to ask you. After going for your deadlift attempt last weekend, this was probably one of your first experiences where you've had a full strongman show after a max deadlift attempt, especially going for, you know, leading into the show, dancing with the idea of a world record deadlift was very much in your mind. How did you feel coming out of that, you know, with those high magnitude attempts and then going into a carry medley after? What signs of residual central nervous fatigue, or give me an idea of what it was like for you?
Well, my attitude to it was to put all of my mental energy and emotion into the first event and then really just relax and let the rest of the show come to me. For example, I don't have my fiance backstage with me ever. I don't really understand the guys who do, to be honest. It doesn't make me feel competitive or aggressive or anything like that. But I said, why don't you come back after the deadlifts? I want to chill out a little bit. So she came back, and in terms of that fatigue sticking around, it was fine. And I think it was a good lesson for me that maybe I don't have to moderate that as much as I think I do at this stage of my career. And I was worried about how that was going to feel when I saw the events afterwards. But what I didn't take into account is how it would feel to everyone else. And with my background, with who I am as a strongman athlete at the moment, I think anything that's going to tax me out will tax my competitors out twice as much. And I was pretty much fine through the show. Even the day after, my mid and upper back was a bit stiff. Otherwise, you give it 2-3 days and physically I was ready to go. Again, this systemic fatigue is something that's going to be seen this weekend. And if I can manage to do well this weekend with the travel, with the comp last week, it'll be a pretty huge confidence boost.
I remember the World Deadlift Championships last year in Manchester, and I remember joining the 1,000-pound club on that day, and it was the next event we had after was a farmer's walk down 30 meters and then a anchor chain drag back 30 meters. I remember my posterior chain was just so blasted that anchor chain backwards, I literally fell on my ass just because I could not hold myself up anymore while I was, you know, hip extended and pushing back with those legs. But it's a different beast when you start off a contest with a max effort deadlift. Usually contests tend to start off with an overhead press, but not this one.
Yeah, well, it was even more hamstring heavy because of how we had to warm up. And we warmed up in the car park, and it was a pretty substantial slant where it was a forward-backward slant. So you had to choose either you face one way and your toes are up and the bar comes into your body, or you face the other way and the bar falls away from you as you pull it. Everyone chose to have it so that their toes were a little bit elevated and the bar would come into them. And the product of that was that my proximal hamstrings, my hamstrings towards the top, before my first attempt even, were grabbing at me. I spoke to a couple of other guys and they independently said the same thing. And I think that contributed to the underperformances on the day. And then, you're going straight into a sprint event afterwards. From a physiological injury management perspective, it's probably not the direction I would have gone, but that's all part of the game as well.
There's a lot of people that speculated that the order of the events should have been a little bit different for the safety of the athletes. If you had just made one switch to where you had switched maybe like the carry medley or the carry medley right after the deadlift with the hammer hold, that would have been a little bit better for everyone in terms of longevity through the day. Do you agree or disagree?
6 of one, half dozen of the other, really. You look at the guys who got hurt, and Pa re-aggravated a groin strain that already existed when he was sprinting and turning and sprinting. That would have been the same. Evan, what happened to him would have been the same. Ivan chose to drop out after the max deadlift, so that wasn't a factor. And Shane Flowers was the only one who missed an event or two, and that's because he had a broken foot. So really, we had no guys who got hurt because of the order of events. I think it made it particularly challenging, but that's the interest of Strongman in some way. And
that's the thing, too. When you have all these concerns, at the end of the day, the thing that we can all take comfort and solace in is if you are the strongest man, these things don't matter to you. You will still prove yourself against the rest. But following along on the live stream last weekend, it really hurt to see how beat up everyone was getting. And even hearing Novikov saying how beat up he was still feeling and watching my brothers not perform at their best. I want to see you guys all perform at your best. And it seemed like a lot of guys were hurting.
Well, it's part of the sport. Like, Alexei is not 100%, to speak a bit out of turn. He's not 100% because he's competed a million times, and that's going to catch up to you. Mm-hmm. I felt pretty much 100% on the day. I think I performed pretty well.
Well, it shows in your performance. Watching you keep it in high gear all the way through those stones. I mean, you and Pavlo Nakonechny just had a hell of a head-to-head all the way through to the end.
Yeah.
I had I've spoken about it before, but my lasting memory of Pavlo from last year was him getting emotionally raised and clocking Novikov on the back of the head in the athlete area, which I'm glad the general public did not have to see that, but us athletes, we saw it. That being said, I was really touched to see Novikov and Pavlo embracing each other with open arms during the show. That unity in Ukrainian brotherhood and letting everyone know that what happened last year is in the past. I have to ask, though, was that just an act or was there things going on behind the scene where maybe he wasn't acting, as professional and understanding or level-headed?
He was good. He was fine. The thing is, though, if you act really nice when you've won and while you're winning, it's a different story than how you act when you don't do well. So for me to really have a judgment on it, I'd have to see him not do well and behave the same way. But between him and Novikov, I walked into breakfast on the first day, and Novikov and him were like sort of beside each other, half turned, like half backs turned to him. So I said, hey to Novikov, and I said, man, you're making me nervous here. What's going to happen? And he goes, thank goodness you're here. You could be my bodyguard now. And but no, I think for them at this stage is something way more important than Strongman going on, and it's very easy just to bury that. Absolutely.
I agree 100%. And it was really interesting watching both you and Pavlo go head to head because you're both fresh into your Strongman careers, and yet you have displayed so much raw talent to where a lot of the other guys in the roster, you left them in the dust. I mean, paint the picture for me of what it was like going into that last event, the Stones. I mean, this is a caliber of performance where you have to be chasing that perfection. Any half second that is not working in your favor is those points lost.
Yeah, the Stones are it's a learning curve for me, and that's sort of how I have to treat it. We use the lighter set of stones, and with the heavier set in London, I was 34 seconds, I believe, because I dropped the second stone. So my attitude was, if I had a clean run under 25 seconds, that puts me in pretty good spot to win. And it was much smoother than it was in London. And I was 21 seconds. And on that lighter set of stones, it just didn't do it. So I don't really have too much regret on the day. And I think I could have done them a bit faster, but in the end, a guy does them in 17 seconds, and you tip your hat to that performance.
Yeah, it's just lightning fast at that point. What was the heaviest stone, weight-wise?
180.
180, so about, what is that, 3... Is that even 400? That's 400,
Yeah,
right?
That's 400. But they have to retire that set of stones. We're too strong for it.
It's a speed game at that point. You know, when you're clearing 5 stones in under 20 seconds, it's the same way I feel about if you have a deadlift event for reps and guys are everyone's doing double digits.
Yep.
It's way too light. You know, you got to up it a little bit. It's strongman. And I guarantee you the crowd wants to see those big, heavy stones too.
Yeah, and you want to see people not complete it, and you want to see some people, I like what Brian said, where if you choose the correct weight, a third of guys won't be able to do it, a third will struggle but be able to, and a third will do it fairly quickly.
That's absolutely right. I agree with that. And we have to be really pushing the bounds. That's one of the coolest things to watch is over the years how the bounds of strength have been consistently challenged. Even listening to the announcers, you know, Neil Pickup and Bill Kazmaier talk about how the opener for the deadlift, 880, there was a point in history not too far back where that was the world record. And now we're talking about things like 505 kilograms. And let's continue to talk about that. You were someone who was very confident about the 505 in the months leading up to the contest. I think I remember even hearing a quote of you talking to either Colin or Darren saying that if you get the 505, will they let you try 510?
Look, I never said for sure I would get it. I always put a number out, say probably 60% odds. I think the biggest thing I underestimated was how the travel would impact me. I don't think that warm-up setup helped. But, you know, on the end, it just wasn't there on the day.
What if it's not there today, what makes it there next year?
You know, if I traveled over earlier, if I focused just on the deadlift for a more extended period of time, I just competed in London 2 weeks before. You know, if I cleaned up that lockout a little bit, if I got briefs that fit me properly, there's a whole bunch of variables that can help out.
And what I'm hearing from you right now is a bunch of priceless insight that you get from the fact that you put yourself to the test this past week. And you don't learn these things until you put yourself in that test.
Yeah, of course. And there's so much that has to go right for something like that to happen. And that's like, Eddie was in England prepping for the show in England. Thor did it at his gym. I think coming from overseas and flying it's a completely different animal. But the 510 quote, that says so much more about human psychology than it does about me saying anything, because 505 to 510 is a much smaller jump than 405 to 410 on a percentage basis. You know, if you have 505, what are the odds you have 1% more? The odds are pretty good. So my argument is just that we're still in the discovery phase for a lot of strength records, and you know that because you look at the trend over time, and it's increasing so much over time. We're not in the 100-meter tenths of a second type territory. So to just say, I might be able to beat it by 1%, and then that's a statement that stuck around for a long time. That's just not how my brain works.
I think the statement itself also speaks to something that is incredibly fundamental to the core of getting a world record deadlift eventually, is you have to have the idea in your mind as something you know you can do. If you don't know you can do it, you're not going to be able to endure the arduous training and build up that leads to that, because the stars have to align. I mean, look at Ivan Makarov. The guy has danced with that record so many times. He's gotten it off the ground, just cannot lock it out. Yep. And he's a deadlift machine. I mean, not to like put you guys side to side, but the guy is just like slabs of muscle and meat specifically structured to deadlift, versus you have a very athletic build about you, but yet you have this power output on a deadlift that just makes people think twice about judging a book by its cover. I don't mean any of that in an offensive way. It's just like paints the picture again of everything has to be perfect, mentally, physically, and in the warm-up scenario too, the fact that they had you warming up on a slanted, if they're going to ask you and hope to get the world record out of their show, then that's unacceptable, honestly.
It is in a way. In another way, Rauno also hit a PB.
He did.
So
yeah, that was incredible.
You can't treat adverse circumstances as the reason. If I don't perform well this weekend, I could say it's because of the travel. I could say it's because I competed the week before. I could say it's because I've had so many comps and so many things to prepare for. And then I could say that looking at Alexei, who's been on 11 podiums in a row and competed like 6 times this year or something. So, okay, you sort of have an excuse, but you also have the ability to overcome it if you have the right mentality.
You have the ability to overcome it, but the margin for error, especially when you are trying to do something that has never been done before yet in human history, it would be ignorant to not take these things into account. If we're talking about having to pitch the ankles forward or backwards just from the surface you're standing on, we're talking about lengthening or shortening the hamstrings. And as you're building up to that max weight, if you've taken 5% extra fatigue away from you in the warm-ups, that follows you there to the platform.
Yeah, and I think it was borne out on the day. A lot of guys, Alexei and Evan, have hit 1,000 pounds before they couldn't. I've hit 475. I was close to getting 476 above my knee. That would have been fantastic. Ivan missed the 505. It was a pretty bad performance based on what we were capable of. But there has to be a regression to the mean at some stage with all these numbers. Like last year with that many people pulling 1,000 pounds, I actually predicted that less people would pull 1,000 this year than last year because these numbers are going to start to become pedestrian to us, and you won't put the same amount of emotional drive towards that. And that is everything when you're going for a max lift.
How important is it to you and the core of your soul to get that world record deadlift?
Not at all.
Not at all?
Zero.
Explain. For someone who chases it, to have it zero importance, is this going to be something that you might try again if it's just in contest, or is there any drive in you to chase that record?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, so this can't be zero.
It is zero.
You got to explain yourself further, Mitchell. Let me hear it. What do you mean?
I think in life you always have to be striving towards something. And for me, it's a lot of different things. And when you talk about something to the core of your soul or the core of your values or the meaning of life, deadlifting does not factor into the equation for me, and neither does strongman at all. What does is objectively improving yourself in some way over time, is sticking to a goal and being consistent about it. But deadlifting 505, it holds the same weight to me as trying to qualify for the Boston Marathon, which will hold the same weight to me as finishing my first Ironman when I'm done with strongman. And I just have such a clear distinction between my athletic goals and my life goals.
Well, that was a distinction that I probably should have made. Let me rephrase my question now. To the core fundamental part of your athletic performance soul, how much does that deadlift world record mean to you? The athletic performance side of your life, not life itself.
Yeah, you want to talk about the conversation between winning the world titles or the deadlift record, or
yeah. Where does it factor in terms of weight compared to getting back to World's Strongest Man next year and improving in your performance?
Look, put it this way. I'm going to compete at World's Strongest Man next year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to compete at Royal Albert Hall next year. That is so cool. Those two things are going to impact my performance in the deadlift negatively. So I believe that actions speak louder than words. So obviously Worlds and other competitions are more important than pulling 505. But if the stars aligned at some point in my career, say I tore a rotator cuff and I couldn't do overhead pressing, I did a lot of squatting got good, my shoulder wasn't good enough to overhead press a lot, then you can dedicate more time to deadlifting. It's always possible that I take a stab at preparing solely for that lift. But I also got away from powerlifting because only doing 3 lifts is horribly boring. And you can't put all your eggs in one basket. Yeah, I feel for Ivan. He has been the guy who's trying to break the deadlift world record for so long. And with that, it's very black and white. You've either done it or you haven't done it.
And you could see it in his face when he missed the 505 this attempt. Like the expression that he wore in that split second when he had to bail and put the bar down, like you just felt for the guy.
Yeah, and
because he's put all of his effort into that deadlift.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can't guarantee any performance on anything, in any comp, in any lift, nothing. So you got to have something a little bit better to fall back on than I'm going to be the deadlift world record holder.
Absolutely. And there's a lot more, and like I said, the distinction between the athletic performance side of your life versus life itself. There is life outside and after strongman. This is not something that we can, we can try to do this as long as we can, but there is very much that Goldilocks zone in terms of our athletic performance through our lives.
Yeah, I was interested to see how I'd react to. I'd say that deadlift is probably my first concrete underperformance in strongman, and I hardly thought about it at all after the show. I thought coming second was pretty great. I was pretty proud of myself for pulling up well, but
that's fantastic. Congratulations, man. That's the podium itself at a Giants Live show is huge, but how much of a nail biter it came down to. I mean, you two standing up there on top, like, it's phenomenal. I know you look at that like any of us would. You dissect it after, and how can I be better for next time? But you should damn be proud of that, man.
Yeah, if I remove myself and I look at, I always think if you took yourself back 6 months, told you what happened, would you be happy with that? And my goal going into the 2 Giant shows this year was to average 3rd place, and I came second and second. The only difference in the second one was I lost first, and in the first one I won second, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But that's the athlete, and that's where, as I'm a competitor, and that's why I want to be here, and that's why I'm excited to be here. But it's not going to make or break my life. If I win the Shaw Classic, Ashley isn't here with me. My family's not here with me. That means I'm coming back to the hotel by myself, and you celebrate with the guys, and, people are happy for you. But it's just a bit different, and you're just a normal person very, very quickly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's why I think it always needs to stay in perspective, and you got to have really clear reasons why you're doing something in any facet of life, or you're going to get lost pretty quick.
Your philosophy surrounding training, athletic performance, recovery, it strikes me as very unique compared to a lot of the other guys that I've been around. And I mean that in an endearing way, because when you get someone with a very refreshing new mindset about them and the way they approach stuff, it's something that you kind of want to learn more about. For example, today, we have at the event center, we've got physio staff over there, IV drips, we've got cold tubs, and at breakfast, I remember you telling me that you don't want to take part in that.
No.
What drives that? I know you've gone to school for different types of therapy sciences and performance sciences, and you seem to be someone who's very much on the forefront of modern discoveries in these realms. What keeps you from getting those treatments over there?
Well, I want to preface it by saying that the best thing for anyone is what they believe works for them. So this is not a knock on if anyone wants to go get their IV drip or their cold tub or their hot tub or their enema or whatever people are doing to try to get that extra little bit.
The old pre-contest enema.
But for me, it just ties back to what's highly evidence-based, and very little is. When it comes to recovery, the only thing that beats active recovery, i.e. going for a walk, is massage. If you're someone who can afford to get a massage every day, fantastic, go for your life. If your partner wants to massage you every day, good for you. Otherwise, just go for a damn walk. Hot and cold is not shown to be good for recovery. It's shown to be average at best. It's shown to be worse than active recovery. Same thing with needling, same thing with cupping, same thing with physical manipulation. I mean, physical manipulations, most modern physios don't really even do them. The only people left doing them are chiros. And they teach it in school for the physios. They'll say, here is ultrasound. Ultrasound doesn't really work that well. It's not supported by the evidence, but here's how you do it. And you're like, what? And so for me, I have a radical view, but it's only radical, I think, because people have gone so radical with things that aren't evidence-based that I come in and my background is not in strongman. It's in science. It's in evidence-based practice. And if you understand the physiology, then you can come up with your own theories pretty quickly, and they make sense. And if they make sense and they're backed by the evidence, well, great. And I said it just before we started the podcast, my time is more important to me than my body.
Yeah, and that hung in the air like a reverberating note for a while. And explain that statement.
Well, I have 2 businesses at the moment. I'm trying to manage competing on top of that. I really enjoy spending time with my family. I try to get out to the golf course as much as I can. So if I'm going to spend my time doing something, it better be good. You know, if I'm sacrificing some other area of my life, it better be great. Really, I put it simply down to, are you going to sit in the cold tub for half an hour, which is probably a 1 hour experience after you get ready and shower and all that? You have 1 hour. Do you sit in the cold tub or do you spend time with your family? I'm spending time with my family because the cold tub doesn't even work. And what does work really well is managing 3 things, which is life stress, sleep, and nutrition. And if you got those 3 in order, the others you're talking about maybe the last 3%, which, by the way, if you're so stressed about getting all your treatments done, you've lost one of those pillars. So you're losing anyway.
I think that's so important that people view those 3 things as pillars. And those 3 pillars don't get nearly as much weight as they should in the vast majority of people. They get so stressed out in following these other things that should only make up a small percentage of that chart. Whereas those 3 pillars, like you said, should be the vast and overwhelming majority. Because if you have those boxes checked, no matter what else you faced, you at least have the core of your well-being.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, when it comes to recovery in a chronic sense, it's more to do with programming than it is to do with what you're actually doing. It's how much are you resting, how much are you pushing, what's your intensity, what's your volume. You get those things right, and you're doing pretty well. If you overextend one of your tendons, over time you'll have it a little bit inflamed, it keeps going, and then macrophages come in, they start destroying the tendon, and that's why you've torn the tendon. And then people will reflect, and often they don't talk about their programming at all. They talk about like, oh, should have gone for more massages and stretched more, which, by the way, I do 0 stretching. And you're like, you're missing the whole pie. You're not even getting a piece. You're missing the entire thing.
You do 0 stretching.
0.
But I feel like you probably are someone who does active stretching when you're working out. Like,
No.
You don't do it like any lunges or anything like that to loosen up? I mean, you just told me that you'd prefer to go for a walk versus, sit and do anything static or cold tubs or anything.
Yeah.
That's actively moving. I don't know if it's stretching, but you do 0 stretching whatsoever.
Well, you're right, though. How do you define stretching? Cool. Yeah, going for a walk is going to stretch my hip flexors to an extent. It's taking everything through a comfortable range of motion. But in terms of actual stretching, I get stuck into whatever event. If I need to overhead press, well, great. I'll start pressing the log. I'll hold the log up above my head for a little bit longer. I'll take my time warming up. I'll make sure my body temperature is up. But stretching for strongman doesn't make sense.
Do you think that any of these philosophies could evolve and change as you sustain more time spent in the sport? Or is this something that you feel you're going to be headstrong and stuck with for the entirety of your strongman career?
I'm open to anything changing, but what's going to change it is not my anecdotal feeling. It's going to be evidence-based. Mm-hmm. If someone says jacking off 5 times a day makes your recovery 10 times better, well, great, I'm going to get onto it. But it has to take the evidence. And the biggest issue with strongman and with people who form opinions is that, 1, their mate did it, so they're going to do it. 2, I did it and it worked, therefore it's always going to work. Which, by the way, once you do something new, you do something for the first time, it's going to work because it's a new thing to your body. And you think it's going to work, and that's what makes it work. Things that stand the test of time, you revert back to, psychology goes away, and it just physiologically is what it is. So will my opinion change on stretching? No. Will my opinion change on active recovery being king? Probably not. But I'm open to it, and it's my work, right? I'm highly vested. I have highly vested interest in making sure that I'm up to date on everything. But when you look through the levels of research that it takes to change an opinion on something, it's pretty big. So you have case studies, which is just Gabe did this and this was the outcome. That is useless, right? It's just interesting. It's like science story time.
Yeah, documentation of the happening.
Yeah. But in no way should that then dictate anyone's behavior moving forward. Then you have randomized controlled trials where you have two groups of people. One group does this and one group does this, which is fantastic. But when it comes to something like recovery, say that they're testing ice baths. And if ice baths has a 1% impact and these two groups go off and one group happens to be tested at 6 in the morning or 7 in the morning, the other group's tested mid-afternoon, there's going to be a stress associated with being up that early in the morning, and that's going to impact their performance, whether they're in the tub or not, and that's going to impact their recovery, and then it's really hard to get really clear information on it. Right?
Absolutely. And on a lot of this, I can't help but realize one of the most fundamental truths to our performance, to our recoveries, to our general going about life is how powerful that self-belief is, or just having your mind behind you. If you feel like you are doing something that is working well for you, just having that mental mindset and knowing that you're moving towards something that you feel is a net positive, that's most often all that you need.
100%.
If the mind is there, if you've got that self-assurance, what you're doing is working. That's it.
And, that bit, if you think about the situation that I've been put into in the past 8 months or something, the confidence that it takes to see every single guy at World's Strongest Man going into the hot tub, cold tub, bar a couple, and saying, like, I know the evidence, and that is what it is. And so I don't need to do that. It's something that it's taken a lot of courage to be able to do in a way, and it's had to be developed a lot over time. You take me 2-3 years ago, I would have followed the crowd when the crowd is this group of people. But now I have the attitude that, what I do is not hurting anyone. I'm happy to talk about the physiology. I'm happy to talk about the psychology. But how those interplay, the only difference really, they believe what they're doing. I believe what I'm doing. I'm wasting a lot less time. I'm enjoying myself a little bit more. And that's fine. Maybe these guys want to take it way more seriously. Maybe they're like, even if it's no benefit, I want to feel like I've done everything I can do. And okay, maybe that's the case. But that's where time comes into play.
And this gets more into the mental side of it too, though. If these guys have the rituals that they need to go through, I need to check off all these boxes to know that I'm approaching this contest with a clear mind, clarity. I'm just set. I've left no stone unturned. There's significant value to having that amount of confidence, but at the same time, how much time itself that you spend getting there versus you could have been out with the family, you could have been swimming, water recreation, whatever, like enjoying life.
Yep.
Versus going through these rituals that may or may not be working. But
on top of the fact that every ritual you have has the ability to throw you. If it's
true.
your ritual to be in the cold tub every night and they don't have cold tubs that year, you're going to be in trouble. So I think in terms of consistency, I take a lot of pride in. I have no superstition, no ritual. I might be listening to rap. I might be listening to country on the day of the comp. I couldn't tell you what elbow sleeves I'm going to wear for the log press. I couldn't tell you what wrist wraps I'm going to wear. I couldn't tell you if I'm going to wear knee sleeves for the yoke or not. And like half of that is born out of how useless I am at keeping track of everything. So like maybe I just won't have a set of elbow sleeves because I forgot them in Wales or something. But it creates a very, very resilient athlete when you have nothing that you say. You tell me I can't wear elbow sleeves for log, okay, that's fine. You tell me this has changed, this rule has changed, this has changed, that's fine. Whatever you want to do, that's okay. And I think what I've seen from guys is that my biggest strength is mental on top of most of the guys that are here.
You strike me as someone who's very confident in your process. And you even you telling me right now, it took a lot of building of that confidence to stick to your guns and to make sure that you can take that assurance in yourself and not give into these external factors of like, I see these guys doing it, maybe I should try to do it. I also remember when we were in the boneyard testing out equipment this year, I remember sharing one of my personal experience with you, like, be very careful in the yard. Like, don't wind up hurting yourself before you even get out to do stuff. Yeah. And then I turned around after talking to Bobby and I see you practicing the power stairs where we haven't even made it to the finals yet. Like, you have a whole nother day if you make it to the finals to try that. And there you are practicing a whole run up the stairs with these massive implements. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, I mean, I did my part and I told him, but this guy obviously has an internal process that he needs to follow.
Well, and hats off to you, hats off to Bobby, because Bobby came up to me afterwards and said, stop, like, you're going to hurt yourself, stop. But it's just these things, right? I unknowingly, by doing that, am sending the message to every other guy in the group, like, I think I'm going to have to worry about this, which sends a message, I'm pretty sure I'm going to beat all you. And I think I have to be a bit careful with that because I don't want it to come across wrong. But I think you have to believe in yourself that way to make it far.
You do. 100%. There's no investing the sacrifice, the blood, the sweat, the tears that goes into the sport if you don't have that self-belief. Like why would anyone want to endure that if you can't believe that you can make it?
I think I believe in myself in every area the same way. And it's born out of having unwavering support from my entire family always about literally anything.
It sounds like you definitely have those core family values. And what size is the family that you come from, your nuclear family? Do you have any siblings?
Yeah, I have one sister. I have a mom, a stepdad, and a dad, and that's the nuclear family, if you will.
And the extended family, are you close with an extended family too, or is it mostly just your nuclear family?
It's really broken. My dad doesn't speak to anyone in his family. My mom has 2 brothers, and I have 2 cousins who don't speak to them either. And going off to Australia and being away when the times were pretty tough, like when it comes to COVID, when it comes to moving across the world and knowing nobody, it's like going to university multiplied by 1,000 in terms of the emotions and the depression, the anxiety, the everything that goes with that. And then my mom nearly died. My stepdad got diagnosed with cancer. My dad had a heart attack all in the past 12 months. So that really put things into perspective. And now weekly family dinners it's a non-negotiable. And I don't take for granted anymore what I had growing up. You speak to so many guys, and my situation is so rare, where I could have gone to my family and said, I'm going to be a ballerina. And every single one of them would have said, like, it's you. Like, you're going to be a fucking great ballerina. And I could have said I'll be a chef or whatever. Anything I do, they've just beat into me. Like, yeah, give it a crack, follow the process, work hard, and you'll probably be able to do it.
Having that family behind you, especially nourishing that self-confidence and like the ability to follow wherever your ambitions lie. I think that created a very headstrong individual to where when you did move to Australia and you were in Australia for the entire time that COVID was going on, what was the total time you were in Australia? 3 years?
A little over 4.
Little over 4. I think any less of a headstrong individual would have come out of that experience probably with different results than you, but you really grew from that in the best of ways, and it shows in what you've built this year.
So I had, in my undergraduate, I had a very long-term relationship that ended quite poorly. And I lost all of my friends with that as well. And there was a professional aspiration to going to Australia. There was also an error in who I was, that I always had the attitude of whatever I do, I could do without people. I don't need to form connections. I don't need to build strong friendships. And in high school, I was valedictorian, which is basically popularity contest for us in Canada. But I also didn't go to a single party. I just was not interested. Same thing in university. I went to the bars a few times, not really into it. Then once that relationship ended, all of our mutual friends didn't talk to me, and I had almost no one left. And so I thought, you know what? I found exercise physiology in Australia. Well, internationally, University of Sydney was #1 in the world. I had the grades to get in. So I thought, this is a big error in my personality. This is something that I suck at, and you got to attack that head first. So I thought, I got to go as far away as possible, get off the plane, have only an address, and figure out what you can do. And largely going over to Australia was learning how to form social connections as much as it was anything. So I threw a going away party for myself when I left Canada. And I had about 5 people who I was able to invite, which included people who I considered friends, a couple of acquaintances. It wasn't like a net core of 5 people. And one person ended up showing up. And that was a real eye-opener of who I was in the past. And I wasn't really someone who people would be attracted to going and hanging around for very intentional and obvious reasons. I thought, just say whatever you want whenever you want to. And if someone interprets that poorly, then that's their fault. And, if you have a differing opinion, then that's fantastic. And you put it out there. And if people are uncomfortable, then so be it. But I went to Australia, and that's probably the primary objective, was to build better connections. And then Ash and I, my fiance and I, we had a going away party when we left Australia, and there was about 75 people and 0 family, of people who I now consider to be family. I consider to be close friends, and that's probably the biggest success of my life to date is that party.
It's amazing to hear that, and also that moment of self-reflection that initially got you to take that step and move to Australia, like that, to get to that point to where you can diagnose, like have that self-diagnostic, like I need to change this about myself, and to take that leap to the other side of the world. That's huge.
Yeah, and it's how everything needs to be attacked. To bring it back to Strongman, there's people who will avoid working on their deadlift because it's not good and they worry about that. Like for me, my max log press 16 months ago was 140. Now I've done 200. Like, there's a lot of factors that go into that.
Dude, I watched you as you were prepping for that Flintstone lift at World's Strongest Man, and just seeing your barbell take these massive jumps from week to week. I'm like, why can't I be like that? It was amazing. Like you really gained some significant tonnage on your overhead press, and that just goes to show you like that you have the mindset that where you have the weakness, you don't just let it fester. You attack it and you capitalize on building it into a strength.
Always. And it's almost to a point where it's a weakness that I don't understand people who don't behave that way. And now I've come so far in that realm that now I have to work to understand people who aren't as driven to improve themselves. And I have family who fall into that category, who I clash with at times because I just don't understand. When you clearly have this error in who you are, then how is that not the first thing on your mind in the morning? How does that not make you uncomfortable? Same thing that I told you, that I think the best part of doing podcasts is listening back and seeing how you communicate, where most people don't want to hear their voice at all. But that's who you are to everybody you speak to. And you just want to turn a blind eye to that. It's scary how a lot of people operate.
Some people don't have the capacity to work out of that comfort zone. And it's a tragic thing because that's truly how you self-improve. And we discover that time and time again every day that we're training for our endeavors in this sport. But that just greater affirmation to the core belief. Like, you've got to push past that comfort zone. You've got to discover those weaknesses. You have to go in the places that don't feel good sometimes to come out better on the other side.
Yeah, and from golf to marathon running to bodybuilding to bike riding to competitive basketball, that's my entire life is basically a mission to continue finding what you suck at and get after it. And it's so valuable and so rewarding when you look back at who you were a couple of years ago and now you're a completely different person. And I can't wait to do this type of stuff in 10 years and look at what a fool I am today. And if you don't think you were a fool 3 or 4 years ago, then you're not living a productive life.
Oh man, I was definitely a fool 3 or 4 years ago compared to right now, but that's part of the beautiful journey and the beautiful process. The growth and the miles traveled from A to B it's amazing.
And it doesn't take much. People are always shocked that I'm 26 years old and I have all these stories and all these things that I've done and accomplished. And if I were to give advice to myself, it would be to slow down a little bit and just, stick with something and, just see stuff through to the end. But on the other hand, it doesn't take a whole lot every day to change who you are. It takes a bit of effort. So I told you, I'm trying to understand different people better. And so like literally right here, this isn't set up at all. There's a book called Surrounded by Idiots. And it's about different communication types. And so I can't communicate very well with people who aren't driven, with people who don't have ambition or goals. So great, like I can find a book to now help me speak to those people a little bit better. And I do some hiring with my company, obviously. And the best question is, what are your ambitions for the future? And people will describe often these lavish lifestyles and owning their own businesses themselves and doing this and doing this. And the follow-up question is, what are you doing now to create that for yourself? And I asked the driver on the way over here, he said he wanted to go back to school for being a detective. And I was like, fantastic. What are you doing to create that for yourself? And he goes, well, I haven't got around to looking into the schools that do it yet. And you're like, okay, you've thought about this ambition, but you haven't spent 5 minutes on what schools do it. And most people, they see point A, they see point B, and they completely disregard the road to get there. And for me, I see a point A, a point B being the end of my life, more often than not the end of my working life. And I just think every step that you take on the way there, it doesn't have to be down the line, it just has to be in the right direction. And Strongman for me has just happened to be a step in that direction. But there's a million other steps that I could have taken, which is why Strongman is a nice proxy to get to where I want to be. But it's not really the only way.
Yeah. But this is describing one of those invaluable personal characteristic traits that you have, is your ability to see a weakness or something that you want to become better at it and just start investing yourself into the steps towards it. Like you said, some people, they'll wake up knowing that there's something about themselves that they don't like, and they'll just ignore it and they'll brush it off and they'll just keep going about their day. And before they knew it, they have a whole year of not making any forward progress towards that direction that they're aiming for. And they're just cruising, and life doesn't go anywhere at that point. But you're not one of those people. No,
there's a great hierarchy of personal independence. And it starts with dependence. And when you're a child, you're dependent on your mother for breast milk. You're dependent on your parents for housing you and all of that. Then when you develop from that, you get independence, which means that you can do anything on your own. After you've mastered that, the next stage is interdependence, where you and I can work as a team now to accomplish a goal. And most people struggle to go from dependence to independence. And it's never even a consideration to how could we work as a collective to work much better. And those people will never have the ability to form a successful team.
What is your greatest piece of advice to give those people, if there's any of them listening right now?
It's a tough one because it's really something that comes from within.
It is, but you had something come from within that really triggered the personal growth that you've experienced over the recent years of your life. And maybe there's some insight there that can be shared.
The biggest distinction that I see in how I behave to how most other people behave, and the average person really falls into a pretty sad category, I think. You know, not in who they are. I think people are fantastic, but in their ambitions for the future. And my advice to those people would be to be more uncomfortable with where you are right now. See your point A, see your point B, and see where your trajectory is currently taking you. And if it's not taking you in the right direction, do something about it. If you're working at Walmart, and I was just telling you before the podcast started, stop talking about gas prices, stop talking about how unaffordable it is to live, stop talking about inflation. You can't control those. What you can control is go out and make more money. Go out, start a business. Get a business degree if you don't know what you're doing. Go learn a new trade. Do you know how much a plumber can make right now? It's not rocket science. It's just things that you don't want to do. You know, even a sanitary worker, a garbage man, makes pretty good money. It's just stuff you don't want to really do.
Yeah.
And you have to look at yourself. And if you want to buy a house and you are working at Walmart and you are not on the fast track to managing a store or whatever, you will not get there ever. You won't get there today, tomorrow, 10 years, 20 years. You will spend that entire time complaining about how little you get paid and taking no action about it. And I think salaries are such an interesting thing to talk about, and how much money you make is a very interesting thing to talk about, because it's a direct representation of what you give to the world. You know, and take charity out of it. Of course, there's exceptions to the rule, but when you come to a capitalist society, if you work at Walmart, the reason you don't get paid much is because you're performing a job that anyone could do. But if you build skills and you commit to an area, if you commit for a decade, it's hard to imagine you're not financially well off, regardless of what you choose in the era of the internet.
Yeah. With these prospective people listening, when they see that endpoint that they want to be at, but then they also see the mountain of work that lies between point A and point B, and they look up at it and they're like, I just don't know if I have it in me. What do you say to them then?
The most valuable conversations I've ever had is with people who are financially set. And the question is, why do you still do what you do? And I would encourage those people to think about, okay, say your wildest dreams came true, you won the lottery, whatever it may be, and you're sitting at retirement, and say you could retire at 45 years old. What do you do then? And the outcome of that thought process should be, whoa, you start working on something else. And the mountain of work, you can't think of it as a mountain because a mountain has a peak. And so when you think about work and work over time, I think of it more as a never-ending upward slant that you are not going to avoid. And you shouldn't avoid it because you always should be working on something. And say my experience from running marathons to going to Strongman, yes, there was a mountain of work, but I just wanted to follow the process. And the process is more interesting than the results. And you just got to get stuck into the process and recognize it's never going to stop. The process will never stop. You hit a goal, great. What's your next goal? What's your next process? And Colin Bryce was talking the other day about how every single world's strongest man has lost his mind afterwards because they've just hit their goal. And I think the general person's biggest fear should be attaining their goal. Because then who are you? Then what do you do? And if you don't have an answer to that, then you're not going to make it very far. But this is why communicating with people who think differently than me is a challenge. Because I promise you, those prospective people, more than half of them, don't like me for what I just said. Don't like me because I think, shut up about your gas prices. Unless you own a transport company or you have some crazy, hectic, long commute, we're talking about, say, the average person probably fills up their tank once a week, right? Yeah? Average tank might be 50 liters. Let's keep it easy. We're going to keep it Canadian as well. Okay. Apologies.
No, you're fine. And anyone who really wants to do that conversion can look it up on Google.
Sure, but the numbers remain. So let's say 50 liters. Gas prices have gone up per liter in Canada. I assume it's reflected in the States. About 60 cents a liter. You're going to spend time quabbling over $30 a week.
What about the single mom with 4 kids who's struggling to fill up her tank to get them to school?
Look, this gets into a much more challenging conversation.
Well, that's what it is. It's challenging because you have so many different variables in terms of livelihoods.
You're getting me into dangerous territory.
Well, you were the one who said you don't mind talking about dangerous stuff. I won't bring up what you said you might want to talk about. You already did talk about jacking off as a potential therapy, so.
Well, hey. When it comes to say that situation, and for context, I grew up with a single mom. She had 2 kids. Financially, we weren't that well off, but I didn't know any different for it because she worked her ass off for me never to know, for me to do every extracurricular and all of that. And there's a couple of unavoidable facts in terms of economic life. And one of them is that if you have kids and you end up as a single parent, that's going to create a very challenging life for you. And, it's you can't say just don't get divorced or just don't separate, but I'd say being very, very careful about who you commit your life to is one of the most important things that you can do. And that person who has 4 kids and they're struggling to get to fill up their car because they've gone to work and they have 4 kids, the harsh question, and it's very insensitive, and we're talking in generalities.
This is hypothetical, and the listeners need to know that it's hypothetical.
The question is, if you don't have a job that can support 4 kids, why'd you have 4 kids? And
what if they're a widow?
Well, what if they lost 2 legs in a train accident?
Hey, man, I enjoy making you squirm with these questions.
It can happen, But when you're talking generalities, the average person who's getting uncomfortable with the statement is not in a situation so adverse that they can't make it work. Right? I could counter and tell you about a very successful single mother who runs a business and does this, but that's also not the reality. That's not the average, right? Child support is something, that it gets into a really challenging conversation. It does.
And this all stems from, the idea of constantly being in the pursuit of moving forward one way or another. And you've said some things that touch to a core philosophy that I have is, the end result is a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful idea. It's the goal that you're driving for. But the real beauty and the real enjoyment and the real character growth comes from the journey itself and every step that is traveled getting to that end point.
Yeah.
I think that's something that a lot of people lose track over is the process, the journey, the steps from A to B. That's where the real growth that gets you somewhere happens. And
that's just life, right? That's life, and it's broken down into every aspect of life.
Yeah. So aside from the work ethic side of you, I want to go back to World's Strongest Man this year, just to touch on it, because this was your World's Strongest Man debut. You got the call up as an alternate, and you wound up taking it all the way to the finals in just tremendous fashion. Being a newcomer to World's Strongest Man, or a newcomer to the sport in general, I mean, you're very fresh in your steps blazing down this path.
Yeah.
With the success that you found from day 1, day 2, day 3, getting into the finals, were there ever any times that you had to check yourself in terms of confidence? Did you ever find yourself getting overconfident?
No.
No?
No.
Walk me through the mentality aspect of it, because that's something that, getting to World's Strongest Man on its own is a mental hurdle in a lot of ways. But getting there very early in your strongman career as an alternate and doing so well with these guys that you've, seen that through screens before, and now you're there competing with them in person. What were some mental hurdles that you felt like you had to experience and push yourself through on that week?
There was a large element of it that I was just so happy to have got invited. And I'm as confused as everyone else on how I got invited. But if you listen to every interview I did, after the first event, the second event, the third event, every time I'd say, it's only the first event. We still have 5 to go. It's only the second event. We still have 4 to go. It's only the third event. We still have more to come. And then after I knew that I won, okay, there's still a whole other competition to be had. And I think there's a couple of parts to it that allowed me to do that. First, I haven't had this goal for a decade. So I don't put weight behind it like I would a goal I've been working towards for a decade. I didn't care about strongman 4 years ago. So I can't now pretend like it's the most important thing that's ever occurred in the world. So I've never put that weight behind it. I put a lot of pressure on myself to behave well when I was at Worlds. I put a lot of pressure on myself to make some connections with guys, which has been a weakness of mine in the past. I put a lot of pressure on myself to interact with the fans in a positive manner and try to make a positive impact on them. That's what I felt pressure to do. I didn't feel pressure to compete and perform well. And yeah, I made the World's Strongest Man finals. Who cares? It's not necessarily.
There's a lot of people who care, Mitch.
Yeah, but who cares in terms of life, not in terms of athletics. And for me, if the importance of athletics is here, the importance of life is there. It's okay, cool. Whatever happens in this little pond is okay, great. I'm really happy that happened. It's in the process of changing my life. But I'm not going to be inauthentic and say, now I think I'm the best in the world for doing X, Y, and Z or whatever. That's why I don't care. If people say they think I could do this, they don't think I could do this, it doesn't bother me. It bothers me if someone comes on and I explain myself poorly about, insensitive about the single mother, and then people will go, oh, you have no idea what it's like, blah, blah, blah. That stuff bothers me, and how I represent myself, that's really important to me. And I keep that at the forefront of my mind, always. And it's sort of a strategy when it comes to competition as well, because you could probably attest that I'm more relaxed than anyone else.
You are very effective at switching that switch on and off, it seems.
Yeah.
We can be having a joking conversation in the back area right before we go out and compete, and then boom, you're pedal to the metal. Not a lot of guys have that, and it's something that has to be gained and worked on over years. But you seem to have that right in your arsenal.
Yeah, my sympathetic drive is just really, really high, and it is in every aspect of my life. Where if I get anxious about something, I'll have a panic attack, and I'll be sweating. Heartbeat will be at 180, and it'll be nothing. It'll be about nothing. But that's just the capacity that I have. So all the work that I have to do is in staying as calm and relaxed and easygoing as possible, or else I'm just going to set my system into a 12 out of 10. And for me, I could literally be joking with you now, walk out that door, and 3 seconds later do a max deadlift, just because I could be ready in half a second, which in a competition like Worlds, a setup like Worlds, is so invaluable. I mean, to not have that emotion day after day after day after day, I stay way fresher.
Yeah, and that is a hurry up and wait game every single day, and to be able to turn that switch on when you need to, it's a massive weapon in your arsenal.
Yeah, and to reflect on the whole experience, it's hard to digest that I beat Brian Shaw in a World's Strongest Man group. It's hard to digest that I beat you or Constantine or Bobby. But I think when you look at it all and you put it in context of I don't think that Brian is the best person here because he won World's Strongest Man 4 times. I don't think that Pujanowski is better than him because he won it 5 times. I'm like, well, I think you're a great guy and you got great family values. And to me, I would rather that than win World's Strongest Man.
You sound like you're very in touch with what matters most in life. And, you just told me your athletic goals are very much down here compared to your life goals, which are way up here.
Yeah.
What are your biggest life goals? And you can reflect on it while I say mine. I want to be the best father I can be, the best husband I can be. I want to know that I spent my life chasing my dreams, whatever they may be at the time, and doing things that I love and doing things that my family loves. Those are my biggest life goals. What about you? Because you seem very close in touch with what your life goals are.
Yeah, as a root, it's about giving back more to the world than has been given to you. And when that comes to being a father, when the time comes, when that comes to my relationship, when that comes to, every interaction that I have, I want to give more to people that I meet than was given to me. The issue being, a fucking lot's been given to me. And Ashley's the best partner that I could ever ask for, and she does so much for me. And I don't near match it. And my family gave so much to me, not only from experiences and trips, but emotionally to get to the place where I am today. They've given so much to me. And as I go forward in this journey, I meet so many incredible people who give so much to me that I'll actually have some pretty intense depression about trying to give that back to other people, because it's just, to me, it feels like there's this big mountain just building and building and building, and I see it as sort of a debt to be repaid. And I'm like, how on earth could I ever repay that? And so that's my life goal, and it's a life goal because I think I'm going to be working very hard till the day I die to try to do that. And I think I have a lot of psychological work to be done to feel like I could ever achieve that.
I think recognizing that the things that you say have been given to you and feeling like you can't measure up to that is also a mechanism of self, which is recognizing what good is and recognizing that you've had goodness reflected on you, and that yearning to match it just attests to your character. Like, you are someone who's very in tune with positivity and the effect it has had on you and your own growth, and you want it to have that same effect on someone else's growth. It's a very generous soul, and I mean, it's tough to hear that those reflections can send you into a state of depression, knowing that you or feeling that you can't quite measure back up. But I think it is you recognizing what goodness is, and that yearning to give it back is a net positive.
Yeah, it's funny though. I've always been that way. We'd go on these incredible vacations to Europe, and we would literally be staying in castles and 5-star hotels and this and this. I'd be 14, 15 years old, and by all accounts, a complete asshole. But you go 5 days into that trip, and I got a lot of flack from my family because towards the end of those vacations, I'd be really upset because I go, what have I ever done to deserve any of this? And the answer is nothing. You just got really lucky and you were born into a family in this way. And so whilst I recognize the people who grew up with nothing, and that would be so difficult in a way I couldn't imagine, to frame success for that person, if they weren't loved, if they didn't have money growing up, if they had no experiences growing up, that person could live a really successful life, becoming a manager at McDonald's, renting out an apartment, creating a comfortable lifestyle for their family, and that's a pretty successful life. They're giving back a lot to the world, and they hadn't been given much. And for someone like me who's had the opposite experience, where I grew up fairly well off, then into my teens, extremely well off, and that's the reason I could go to Australia. That's the reason I've been to Europe several times. It's so many things. The responsibility to take that as a hand up is pressure that I've felt since I was a teenager. So, I got a lot of work to do. I got a lot of work to do in what I can provide, a lot of work to do in who I am, a lot of work to do in what I can give to people. And that's all the process. But I think the most important bit that distinguishes me from everyone else is that I'm thinking about it. And I don't think many people think about it until they're 60, 70, before they can make any change about it. And I think that's a blessing of having some questionable mental health throughout your life, is that if you don't, you never have to reflect on what you're doing, why you're alive, why anyone wants to be around you.
The metal is hardened by putting into a forge. You have to go through all these hardships and adversities to come out the other end better. And I think all this work that you foresee for yourself in having to reciprocate the good things that have been given to you, it's going to result in some really amazing stuff in the years to come, both for you and for the people that you affect with your life. And that's an exciting prospect.
It is. And the beautiful part about the world is you attract what you put out. And the bit that I have to come to grips with is the more good that I try and do, the more good will be done with me, for me, around me. And if you can just create that culture around yourself, then that's a success in and of itself. And I understand that logically right now, but I don't understand that emotionally.
You had a quote that I remember you saying on one of the post-event interviews at Worlds. It had to do with smiling. Can you regurgitate that quote for me? It was something about being happy in the moment, just smile, or just... I know it's something that you've repeated over and over again.
Are you talking about lift heavy, be kind?
Oh, lift heavy, be kind. Yeah, that's it. I confused the kind
yeah,
with the
that's
smile.
right.
Lift heavy, be kind.
Yeah.
How did that start? Because it's such a great saying.
Well, it started, and I just confided this to her a couple of weeks ago. Ashley, my fiance, when she really likes someone, she'll instinctively just say that they're a very kind person. And it's sort of a combination of the two of us in a way. It's also a constant reminder of, I haven't always been a kind person. When I was 16, 17, if I could make a joke that would make 100 people laugh and would send you into a depression, I'm like, it was funny to a lot of people though. So okay, I'm making a good joke. And so it's a constant reminder for me that that's what I'm striving towards. That's the motto, not because I feel that's who I am, but because that's who I want to be. And that's what I want to put out into the world for a lot of different reasons. One of them is as simple as guys like you and I, with the weights that we lift and the size that we are, most people would be afraid to see us in a commercial gym. We're the last person they'd want to see. But we're probably the first person that they should talk to, because we're actually really genuine, normal, nice guys. And I just want to try to change the dogma around that a little bit. And if I could drop the intimidation of going to the gym for an average person, if I could drop that by saying look at me on the world stage, smiling, laughing, I got time for everyone, then maybe I could start to turn the tide a little bit. Maybe I could impact a few people and get them a little bit fitter. And if I could be half as kind as Ashley, then like, great. I don't think I'll ever get there, but it's just what I strive to do.
I love that dogma. I think it's incredible. I remember when I heard it and it just stuck. Like that is the embodiment of Hooper and what he's chasing right now. Lift heavy and be kind, and it's really great.
Yeah,
and congratulations to you and your fiance, by the way. Have y'all picked out a date?
Yeah, we should be married by now, but with lockdowns and whatnot, it's September 2nd of next year.
Wow.
And then, then life begins from my perspective. We get to the stage that you're at, and we have a kid. We have something more important than anything that either of us are doing, and I can't wait for that. I would, if it were up to me, I'd have 5 kids, 6 kids, 7 kids. I just think that that's based on my values that I've spoken about today. Like, that's what my goal is. Yeah, that's what I want to do. I just can't turn her into a single mom.
I think you're going to be amazing, brother. I really do. And I wish you and your wife to be all the best, especially with the prospective family that is yet to come over the years. So, some quick questions for you now before we start wrapping things up. Mm-hmm. What is with the toe socks?
So I don't,
because the whole world has seen them now. Yeah. What is with the toe socks?
I don't do it intentionally at all. The socks come in size 10 to 13. My feet are size 14. I encourage you to go back and look at the behind the scenes of the Deadlift World Champs that Liz did. And you can see in my warm-ups, my socks did not have any holes in them. No holes. But since my foot's a little bit too long for the sock, particularly with the motion of the deadlift suit where you kind of wiggle your feet in, it just promotes the toes coming out. So, actually.
Do you have them with you?
Oh, I don't know if I have any torn ones with me because I tear them as I wear them.
I guarantee you're going to wind up tearing them, and then everyone's going to get to see.
And but she got me a whole bunch of size 14 to 16 socks, so I should be a little bit better set. But I'm happy for it to be my thing. I think it's pretty funny. I keep telling people at meet and greets to say, if you bring socks, I'll accept them. Fresh, new socks.
Well, on other things that are your thing, I've noticed that post World's Strongest Man around Royal Albert Hall, the mustache has surfaced.
Yeah.
It looks good. You look like you've got that, I think I was talking to my wife, and she's like, he looks like that cop from Reno 911. Did you ever watch that show?
No.
Oh, man, well, there's a cop who wears really short shorts on there, but has a very nice mustache.
Right.
You got the mustache going on. What have you rocked the mustache before, or is that?
No, I can't really grow any facial hair. This is as much as I got.
It looks good, man.
At the moment.
You're pulling it off.
I'm sort of mixed feelings about it. I don't know if it's going to stay or go, but I haven't missed a podium since I've had it, so it's hard to then shave it.
How's the fiance feel about it?
She likes it. It came about because we watched Top Gun, and I had to shave anyway, and she said, just leave the mustache, let's see how it looks. And then she said she liked it, so I've kept it. I think she's sort of grown to be ambivalent towards it. So the test would be if I shaved it off, then what does she say? Because that's really the only bit that matters, right? I could care less how many middle-aged moms, and they love to do it, tell me how bad it looks and I don't like it, blah, blah, blah. It's really, does my fiance like it? Yes or no? And that's the determinant 100% of if it stays or if it goes.
Yeah. What if you shave it off and no more podiums? Does it come back?
If I shave it off and what, say?
And no more podiums.
Oh, then it has to come back.
Of course.
Yeah, I'll have to bring back a Fu Manchu or something.
It's like Samson and his hair, but with the mustache.
That's right. It just gives some texture because I can't grow hair. And without any hair and without any facial hair, you're like, there's a lot of blank space to work with there.
a nice template, a good canvas.
That's right.
Here we are on the precipice of the Shaw Classic. What are you looking forward to the most out of this contest, event-wise?
I'm glad you said event-wise because you know my answer wouldn't be anything.
Oh yeah, no, you're going to give me something very profound and philosophical if I didn't say that. Event-wise,
it's all really interesting. I look forward to doing the heavy yoke.
You are someone that moves so fast with yoke that just slows people down to a crawl.
Yeah.
Have you always been good at yoke, or?
Yeah. There's an infamous story about me doing yoke, and it was maybe a month into my strongman career. I was on a motorbike in Sydney, and the drive out to the strongman gym was about 40 minutes or so. So I made my way out there, and one of the guys was peeking up to try a 500 yoke. He was trying to do it 500 for 5 meters, no drops. And he'd been working at this, like, a literal 12-week block. Like, this was just his thing. And he had it loaded up to 450. And I get off the bike in my running shoes after sitting for 40 minutes. And jokingly, he says, "Hooper, you're not allowed to go into the gym until you do this." And this is a month into my strongman career. I grab my belt into my bag. I chuck the belt on. I'm just in running shoes, no knee sleeves. I pick up the 450 yoke, take it for 10 meters, and go, "Okay, right, are we good?"
Had you never done yoke prior to that?
I had done yoke before.
What was your best at that time prior?
Hard to say, but the first time I did yoke, I was able to do 1,000 pounds.
Oh.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. Like, I think there's a few elements to it. I think running really helps. I think my athletic background really helps. I can't really explain it. And to be honest, it gets into the philosophy of who you should go to for advice. Like, don't come to me for advice on yoke. I've always been good at yoke. I haven't had to figure a thing out about yoke. So go to someone who used to suck and is now good, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a really natural thing. And yeah, at 500 kilos, 20 meters, I was looking at the results from last year, and I think Evan won with about 30 seconds. I'm like, if I don't break 15, it'll be an underperformance.
Your own toughest critic. 15 seconds with a 500 kilo yoke. That's insane. Aside from the yoke, what else are you looking forward to?
I think the bag toss is going to be fun. I haven't been tested at this level for bag toss. Physically, I think I'll be all right at it. TBD. I'm always more interested in the things that I don't know how I'm going to do than I am in things.
That was my next question. Is what is the one that you're looking forward to the least or the most apprehensive about?
That leg press.
Go on.
Injury risk. Injury risk, I think, is really high. And I've said this a couple of times now. I think injury risk is really high when you ask guys of our strength level to push into a plate as hard as you can without any element of control, right? If we did maximal push press and it was on a Smith machine, we'd be able to load that thing up to like 250, 260. And that's not a safe thing for us to be doing. The same thing applies with the leg press. We couldn't squat 1,000 pounds for reps, but we're going to be able to push that leg press at 1,400 pounds for reps. What's the difference? And the difference is just you don't actually load a leg press. So you take the core out of it, you take the upper half out of it, and now we're demanding solely on our lower extremity to push. Okay, is every single one of your tendons and ligaments ready for a leg press that's 1,400 pounds? Probably not. Like, seriously, a lot of
I've told you, and what took me out of Giants last weekend was I sprained one of my hip adductors training leg press. Like, one of the tendons was obviously just not ready, or the muscle was just not ready for it. And it's a huge demand for the body, but no matter how much we get disgruntled over it, we come back to the circle around and find that same undeniable truth that the strongest man is going to win it. But who's going to get a little chunk of them taken away from it?
Yeah, yeah. And you're not going to win it if you get hurt on the first rep or the second rep. The thing is, it doesn't take you 6 weeks or 8 weeks, 12 weeks to get a soft tissue ready to compete. It takes years and years and years to be able to build that tendon to be thicker, to be stronger, and to be able to tolerate that type of thing. I think groin is going to be a particularly challenging one for a few people. And it's just risk profile, right? I think the risk profile is far too high. It doesn't mean that anyone's going to get hurt. It just means that it's a risky event. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because people were talking about, like, I thought it was going to be injury risky. And people were talking about, I think he's going to figure out how to secure the car on fine and blah, blah. I'm like, I don't think the car is going to fall on anyone. But that's the one I'm most apprehensive about. I'm really looking forward to stones. For anyone who's followed me closely, I'm still learning stones, and I'm still learning how to do them well. At Worlds, I injured myself on the last stone. At Giants Live, on the heavier set of stones, I got 35 seconds and dropped the second stone when I went to load it. In the next Giants Live, I did 21 seconds on the lighter set of stones, much smoother. And the strength is there. All the physical characteristics are there. So I look forward to being able to build off that performance.
These stones are going to get heavy. These are Brian Shaw stones.
Yeah, which is, I want that, right? I want that. I don't want it to be a case of, you're sprinting around like a wild banshee, trying to get 5 stars in 15 seconds. And I said it at Worlds, actually. The way that Worlds was set up in the heat suited me very well, but it didn't mean that I was in favor of it. Yeah, I want a fair competition as much as anyone. I think this is a heavier than average competition. They're calling it the heaviest comp in the world. Very well could be. But I think there's a certain athlete who could really thrive under this set of events. And it's guys like Trey. It's guys like Brian. And I have proven that in lighter shows, I'm one of the best in the world. If I can come out this weekend and I can prove that in a heavier show, I'm also one of the best in the world, it launches you into Novikov territory, into Martin's territory, where anything that you show up to, people are looking at you and you've got a target on your back.
I think so. There's going to be some really monumental fun stuff that happens over these next 2 days. And I'm really excited for it. I'm glad that you're here for it too. This is it's going to be a wild one, brother.
Yeah, it's going to be cool. Talk to me about your log press strategy.
My log press strategy is to just get that first one.
Okay.
You know, my log press has been playing the catch-up game over the past years, and especially with the knee injuries, it's been really hard to get that to come up. So if I can get that lighter log, the 380, I'll be happy with it.
More interestingly, I suppose, what are you going to go for deadlift? What do you reckon?
Dude, I want that world record so bad. I want it.
You reckon it's there?
Whether it's there or not, I'm good. I'm going into this thing aiming for it, and I will take the diagnostic of how those lifts leading up to it go.
Yeah.
But ever since I got done with the Hummer Tire deadlift last year, I have always been aiming at coming back for a vengeance and taking that record from JF.
What'd you hit last year?
1100. I tried for the 1150, couldn't quite get it, but I feel a lot more confident this year and ready for it because I had done it already before.
Yeah.
But it's a fun lift, man. It is such a fun deadlift just because of how big it is.
Easier than the 18-inch deadlift? Must be.
Easier because that bar does flex.
Yeah.
The 18-inch axle, that was just dead freaking weight.
Yeah.
And but here we don't get the suit.
Yeah, that's right.
No suit, no figure eights. This is a very real representation of power.
Yeah.
But that's the one I'm looking forward to the most. I'm glad it's first.
Where do you think you're going to finish?
For the whole show?
Yep.
I don't know. The overhead press events are tough for me, and then I am apprehensive about the leg press just because I did get injured from it recently. I feel good now, and taking that week off and not competing at Giants really did my body some good to where I know I can push it.
Yeah.
But last year, I think I finished in 13th out of the 16. I want to blow that placing out of the water, but I also want to come out of this thing not dangerously hurt.
Yeah,
so,
which is always our goal, isn't it?
We are among the best in the world here, and if I can take progression from last year, I'm going to do it. Of course, I'm aiming for podium, but I just want to beat what I've done last year, and I want to keep building.
Yeah,
and I want that world record on the Hummer Tire.
Yeah. Well, that'll give you some good points anyway, won't it?
Yeah. You got anything else you want to talk about for the Shaw Classic, or?
No, I'm really excited to see how it goes. It's my first non-Giants World circuit type thing. And it'll be really interesting.
This is such a great event because this event you get nonstop feelings of the athlete being the core of everything. The athlete comes first, and not to say that World's Strongest Man or Giants Live doesn't do that, but obviously at World's Strongest Man it's a TV show. At Giants Live you're filling up a stadium and we're filling up a stadium here too. But something about Brian getting to do things his way and from the athlete's side putting it on. Yeah. It's got a different feel to it, and when it starts tomorrow, it's gonna be fun, brother.
Yeah, I'm excited. Really fun. I'm excited because I know that Brian has a very particular way of how he likes things to be, but I don't know what those ways are. So I'm gonna get to see it tomorrow.
I've only done this show once. I did it last year, but it became my favorite show ever to do as an athlete, and it's a blast, man. It's a blast. Cool. But I love to finish these podcasts with a space out.
Yep.
And I feel like you present a very unique space out opportunity because a lot of people like to call Super Hooper Buzz Lightyear in real life. How close are you to the idea of Buzz Lightyear? Is there a space explorer? Is there a Star Command explorer there somewhere in you?
It's interesting to me. Like, it's definitely interesting to me. I haven't watched Buzz Lightyear. I take no affiliation with Buzz Lightyear. But when it comes to space, it's just fascinating, isn't it?
If you had the opportunity to lift for science, lift in the name for science in space, would you?
Lift in the name for science
Or
in space.
if you could lift for research purposes in the name of science in space, would you?
Am I getting paid?
Sure. Let's say you're getting paid. Let's say NASA wants to send you to the moon to do like some strength testing on the lunar surface.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah?
Hell yeah.
You would do it?
Hell yeah.
You know, I asked this question at Worlds in 2020, and I got a straight no from everyone.
What?
Yeah, I thought it was absurd too.
Imagine the deadlift you could do on the gravity of the moon.
I haven't factored that out exactly, but it's definitely well over the 2,000 pound range.
Oh, it'd have to be.
I would love to do that. But even what about in just orbital space? Like if you were doing science research in the space station.
Yeah, dude, why not?
Well, a lot of the other guys would argue to say, 1, the spacesuits. 2, you're always in a closed environment. 3, things can go wrong with rockets. I mean, do any of those carry weight in outweighing the prospect of being out there for you? Or no, right? You're just like me.
1, stop whinging. 2, stop whinging. And 3, stop whinging. I mean, if you're asked for any experience, that would be one of those things that at the end of your life, you remember that as one of the core memories, if you will. If you say no to that, you are a loser.
I agree. I mean, and you put it very bluntly, but I agree. You're missing out on a very, just one of those game changer moments, one of those rewriting history type moments. What about Mars? If that's a lot further away than orbital space or the moon. If you got approached by one of these space agencies like, hey, we want to send you to a colony on Mars, would you?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Send me to Venus. Send me to wherever you want.
Oh, Venus, you're not coming back from that.
I mean, look, you figure out how I get there and what I do. If I'm just going there for an experience and I do some lifts on the way there, hell yeah.
What if there's no guarantee of coming home?
There's no guarantee of anything. I'd look at, you know, like, yeah, there's a space shuttle that's exploded on takeoff, right? But the percentage chance, I would hazard to guess that it's not far off driving a car.
I mean, I would argue that rockets are a little bit more prone to explosion than car, but
in terms of people who have died compared to people who have survived, expressed as a percent,
I don't have the percentage.
But intuitively, how do you think that stacks up to driving on the highway?
I don't know, because even the few shuttles that did blow up, that's for the amount in terms of the amount of people that went up in the shuttles.
Yeah,
that's still, like, let's say it's a crew of anywhere from 2 to 4 people. That's still a pretty big percentage base versus off of, you know, let's say you have one person per city dying in a car crash every day. If the city's got 1 million people in it, then
yeah, no, I understand the logic, but add up all the risky behaviors that you do in terms of driving, in terms of crossing the road.
I think there's many more contingencies in place for rocket travel. You know, there's a lot of, especially nowadays, building off of the tragedies that have happened in the past. Like, I think the chances are much higher of success nowadays.
Yeah, would you go out of your way to pay to be one of the people who go up into space recreationally?
I would. That's actually a goal of mine. I want to get myself to a point in my life in financial security to where, you know, 10 years from now, when space or travel has become more commercialized, I want to be able to look at the Earth from a distance. I want that for myself. I want that for my daughter, my wife. Like, this planet is amazing. It's beautiful. It's given us so much, but look at what all else is out there.
You're so limited.
I know, and I feel like all the astronauts that have had the experience of getting to go up and see everything that we know as home represented as this globe in the distance, you have to gain a very new perspective and understanding of what it means to be alive at that point.
100%.
And that's such a small lucky percentage of people that have gotten there.
I don't know. How old are you?
I just turned 32.
Yeah, I reckon by the time you're 65, it's going to be a lot more available than you think.
I think so too, and I'll be up there. I'll be up there 65 years old, just like peace signs back down.
Yeah.
What excites you the most about the growing space race in terms of colonies on the moon, on Mars, SpaceX, you know, commercial travel?
Everything for me is just the potential to make life better. And I was saying to you earlier, pick another time period that you would rather be a part of, and you can't. And it's because of these types of developments. Even the byproducts of exploring space and what NASA has come up with, just because they had to invent it for space exploration, has made the world vastly different. It made it much better.
Exactly. Our phones that we use every day. Yeah, like that all came from the moon race, you know?
Yeah. And then, you know, if we find, say we somehow found another group of people, you're telling me that they haven't lived this parallel life to what we have, but instead of cars on 4 wheels, they have self-balancing cars on 2 wheels that are twice as fuel efficient. How valuable would that be? Like, nice, cool. You're telling me that they haven't figured out 3D holograms on the table. Or if you just ran the world over and you started back from year zero of humans being around, we would probably have developed in very similar ways. But there would be so many cool things that just happened to be invented because someone came along and, you know, just the same way cell phones came about or microphones came about or electricity came about. Like, there's another universe, there's another planet where, like, someone's figured out just how to make the walls light up. And, like, no, there's not a stupid lamp there. Why would you have that when the walls light up? Yeah. So that type of stuff is really exciting to me.
I think so too. I feel like when we finally do get to Mars, especially, you know, SpaceX and the Starship heading out there, the technology that we need to have in place for that to be a success, there's going to be a lot of cascading effects in terms of technology that we get here on Earth stemming from that just makes life overwhelmingly better. And that's exciting.
Yeah. And in terms of the planet not existing one day, I think people are a little bit sensational about it, and it's not as soon as people believe it's going to be. But of course it's going to be someday. And you hope that we have a contingency plan outside of just everyone being in a plane whenever something happens to happen. Yeah, if we could head off to Mars and live another life there, then yeah, I mean, why not?
Why not? But even that as a contingency plan is slim picking. I mean, it's a arid wasteland with no breathable atmosphere and very cold. But it's still a contingency, and it's a lot further away than the moon in case shit goes south down here.
Well, look, it's all just problems, and problems have solutions.
Yeah.
And you and I are not smart enough to discover the solutions.
No, we're not. But the people who are,
yes,
the prospect of them doing that is very exciting.
100%.
But thank you for indulging me on a little space out. Mitch, where can people find you at on social media?
Instagram, Mitchell Hooper. I've got a link in my bio there that links to everything else I do. I've got the YouTube, the TikTok, all the other things, and I'll get my own podcast going up soon.
Any parting thoughts to our audience listening?
No, I just want to give a quick shout out to Tom and what's happened to him over the weekend and how open and honest he's been with that. I have so much respect for how that situation was handled, and you know, it's there's certain people in the sport who do more for strongmen than just lift weights, and the Stoltmans are one of them. And thoughts are out to him, and huge respect to him and Luke for doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of love to them. It's those two are larger than life in so many ways, and the effect that they have on all the followers of what they do, what we do. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Titan Talk. I'm Gabriel Pena. I've been joined by Mitch Hooper. We are here in Loveland, Colorado for the 2022 Shot Classic. Looking forward to having a really good and heavy time, lifting heavy and being kind over these next few days. Until next time, y'all be safe out there in this universe of power.